Hey, what's up guys? Today in this video, let's look at how we can start implementing mixpanel into any kind of application. Now, mixpanel is an analytics application. It allows you to capture different kinds of behavior from your application, what users are doing on your website or your app, and then based on that, you can slice and dice your information and many interesting ways and come up with very useful information. Now, just to tell you, this video is not at all sponsored by Mixpanel or any other company. The reason I'm doing this is I have been recently doing a lot of reading and R&D on these analytics requirements, and that's where within our company we also decided to look at Mixpanel and what are the different possibilities of using Mixpanel in the scheme of things of our the requirements which we get. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm planning to do things and then share it with you and learn or whatever are my findings, so that you can gain that knowledge which I am getting while I am learning Mixpanel and other analytical softwares. So without too much talking, let's get started. Let's see how Mixpanel first of all can be installed in a basic Laravel application. To show you what the setup is, I have a clean installation of Laravel, and the only thing which I have done is within my env I have added the Mixpanel settings, or rather key, which what you can do is go over here and go to the projects to get the keys. Okay, that's all that I have done. You can look at the documentation to get the keys. I don't want to reveal them. Okay, and then the dashboards and everything are pretty much empty right now. I haven't done anything with them, so everything will be empty. As you can see, we don't have any data. That's what they're saying, right? So then how do we install Mixpanel? Let's see. I'll be using Laravel, so let's see the PHP SDK. Okay. So I need to do a composer require of this package. This is on 2.0. That's fine. Let's just do that. But before we do that, let's quickly go over the things and understand what is happening. So this is how we install the library, which is very typical. It's a composer package. EU data residency. So route data to Mixpanel's EU servers by setting API-EU. So basically that means if we are targeting the European servers, then we can add this thing. Now from here, what I understand is Mixpanel, I can create an instance of Mixpanel. When I do Mixpanel get instance, I pass the token is already there. Okay, so I can use that, and then array host this. But I think this should be an additional parameter, because when I had created the project at that point of time also I had selected EU as my data center. So the project must be aware of things. That's my understanding. We will see. Okay, and then track an event. So once I have the instance, I can call the track function on that instance. And so the first parameter is the event name, obviously, and then whatever data I'm trying to send, that's fine. And Mixpanel determines default geolocation data, city, blah, 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 using IP address of the incoming request. Okay. And read about best practices for geolocation with server-side implementations. We will look into that, but right now we will only do the basic stuff. Super properties are properties that genset with every subsequent tracked event. This is very useful for associating properties such as add source to event. Okay. So what do we have in here? Register the add source super property. Register add source Google. Okay. And then track an event with a property add source equals Google. I didn't completely understand this. I'll have to see. So such properties are set with every subsequent tracked subsequently tracked event. This is very useful for associating properties such as add source to the event. Okay, so what I understand is if I want to categorize certain kinds of events, I can do that. But then does this mean I'll have to track this separately? I don't know. We will have to see. Okay. Registered subproperties are only persisted for the life of mixpanel class instance. Okay, so this does mean that the properties will be set for one request and they want us to initiate this during a request lifecycle. Okay, so that's fine. Can do that. And then managing user identities. There are quite a few things, and I think we should get started before we deep dive too much into things, because otherwise we will not be able to finish anything. Okay, so composer require. And while this is installing, why don't I go inside services? Let's say mix panel. And inside mix panel, it is called project token. So what we will do is we will also name it the same so that it doesn't create any kind of a confusion. Oops. The E on my keyboard is behaving a little strange, and this is surprising because the E is obviously one of the most used keys. Wow. Mixpanel token, or maybe just token. That I think token should be fine. And what I'm gonna do is env mixpanel token. Okay. Now this means I will be able to get some basic information, or I can pass this configuration to mixpanel somehow. Okay, but then the question is how do I plan to do that? Okay, why don't we do one thing? As a rule of thumb, let's say we are going to have different kinds of events, right? And my understanding is that we should have our code in a way where switching from mixpanel to some other service provider should not be very difficult. So what we will do is we'll create an interface called, let's say, tracking interface. And inside the tracking interface, we will have different definitions of the functions that we require. And then we will create an implementation of that interface called mixpanel tracking service. And that is something which will bind to that interface. So everywhere in the application, we will use the tracking interface, and we can swap it easily. I think rather than explaining, it will be better once I start showing you things. So it will be very clear to you. So we have services, and let's just say we have what? The name will be tracking interface. Okay. Namespace. Namespace will be services as well. So services, an interface. So interface this. And now, what all things do we need inside the interface? For now, let's just keep only one thing, which is public function track event. Now let's quickly look at what is the documentation for track event. Track event was here. So it takes the event name and an array of options. And that's precisely what we are trying to do. So string $name array options. Okay, something like this. And then we create an implementation of this. Let's just say mix panel tracking service, namespace is app services class. Okay. Now, what we said is this is the interface which the application is going to use. So the application is not aware of this implementation, which is mixpanel tracking service. What they understand is that there is a contract which says that I can call this function and things will magically happen. The application doesn't need to understand how that is going to happen, right? So in here, implements this. Okay. add stubs. That's fine. I'll write the function in a bit. But then we need to create an instance of our mix panel, right? So how do we do that? Let's just start with, should we do it as a protected or a private property? Let's start with the private property, mix panel. Okay. And we'll have a constructor like this. I don't need over here, and these are also not required. But mix panel token equals config services dot. Wow, I thought the autocomplete used to come, or it is available with VS Code. At least that is. I know that for sure. Surprising that it is not coming over here. Okay, so I have the token. We now call this mix panel equals mix panel. Interesting. Yeah, I think this is the class mix panel get instance. I pass in the token. Okay, so far so good. And what happened to this? Property is only written but never read. Yeah, that's fine. I am gonna read it. So that's PHP Storm linting for you. Yeah, we have mix panel, right? So ideally this mix panel and then track. This function is available, which is good. Name and then options. Okay. Now, how do we confirm that we are able to use that particular kind of function? So let's do one thing. Let's go to web.php and okay, before the route, I'll need to create a controller. So let's call this as test controller for now, because I will later delete it. Okay, it's done. I don't need this doc block. Sorry, documentation. Route get test, and we just created test controller. And if I do this and I have the invoke method inside my controller, then it should work. Invoke okay, right, like so. Okay, we have our invoke controller ready. Let's send something in return to confirm that we are able to see the page. What does it say? Missing argument, missing functions return type declaration. Okay, that's fine. I mean, this is not a type hinting thing, but yeah, let's keep that simple. I think because this is okay. No, this is PHP 7.3. I don't know why this is complaining, but that's fine. Yeah, let's generate some event. Okay, let's generate some event and see whether we are able to see that on the admin screen. Okay, what should we track? We can do maybe an order purchase, like they have button click, right? So we can do something like order purchase, or maybe rather user registered. Okay, so we will now need to get the interface. Okay, tracking interface is something which we should get, and we should be able to call the function which is track event. But then how do we inject an interface and call that function? There's no implementation, right? We need to tell Laravel that if throughout the application tracking interface is being used, you should give an instance of mixpanel tracking service. So that's something which we do inside the app service provider. And inside the app service provider, we go to the boot method. Okay, not actually, no, it's not the boot. It's the register where we should add things. Okay, especially the binding. So this app bind. So this is my interface, and I'm saying that the mixpanel tracking service is the implementation. If you see, right, it says, can I, if I cut this, it used to show the hint of what exactly what is, but I think it's not coming up right now, but that's fair. We will see that later, or maybe, yeah. So this is the abstract. Okay, I was making a mistake. So this app, it's not app function. So abstract is the interface, and concrete is the tracking service, mixpanel tracking service. Okay. So now that the framework is aware of this association, let's do one more thing. Come over here into our controller and inject the interface. Tracking interface tracking. Yeah, that should be good. And what we will do is tracking track event name. Let's just say user underscore registered, and we need to send some options. Now, obviously, we haven't done any R&D or too much reading up on what options are available. But generally, what happens is you get to choose any kind of a key value pair, and you can store it. So let's just say what we do is user underscore ID. We store it as maybe 22, and then email. Okay, we decide to store the email. Obviously, that should be there. Is fake@gmail.com, maybe something like this. Okay, and with this, my idea is that we should be able to track the event. Let's see. The route is what? Test. Okay. We returned the array, which it was supposed to do. And then let's go over here. I don't see anything. Events. Refreshing the page. Nope. We don't have anything as of now, which is odd. And we haven't got any error as well. So test controller. Is there some problem with creating that instance? I'm not sure. So let me see if there is any problem with my config. I'll go to services.php. Right. So this is not misspelled. And ideally, I don't need to refresh now if the env changes. So I don't know why this is not loading data. Okay, now it came up. I don't know why the previous one didn't come through. But as you can see, okay, so the endpoint is actually api.mixpanel.com, which means ideally I should pass this EU API EU mixpanel. So we will add this. Okay. And let's just say we want to keep this as the default option. So it is quite possible what we can do is options and then host is equal to something like this. So what is going to happen is, right, it doesn't matter whether you are sending the host or not. We are explicitly setting it to API-EU. So it will always get this value. Okay. And with this, if I refresh again, I think I'll add one more event. But obviously, let's change the email maybe, just to have some variance. Hit refresh and come over here. Event. Okay, so all the three events got captured. It took some time to get started, I think, because there was the first event. It took some time to understand the property and stuff, and then started tracking quickly. And this is 4 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. This should have been a different one, fake at Gmail. Okay. I think one more is pending because the recent one, which we did, has John Doe. So we should be getting that value instead of the last one being what? Fake at gmail.com. So this is fake at gmail.com. Correct. This is fake at gmail.com. And this is fake at gmail.com. So which means the other one hasn't come yet, which is fine. These things may take time a little bit, but then have I saved the file? Oh, this is PHP Storm. It ideally should. And ID should have been different. I think that's a problem. But yeah, not a big enough problem for it to not track. That's what I understand. Let's just see. Do we have a fourth event in here? Yesterday, none. User register. Okay, and this refresh versus this refresh looks like there is a difference. But yeah, so again, we have John Doe, user ID 25, endpoint is api.mixpanel.com. Mixpanel properties, this is fine. Your properties, email, host. This is okay. This is strange because as per the documentation, host is defined. Then why is it not taking that? I don't know. We'll have to see what the inner class is doing. But I think we are at least able to get this information in place. So we are able to track a basic event right now. And that is on the starting point. Obviously, we have achieved something today, which is getting the Mixpanel SDK in place, getting a proper interface in place, which will be used throughout the application. And then finally, we have started pushing event data to Mixpanel. So that's about it, guys. In the next video, we will see how we can add more complications, or rather not complications, but rather complexities to this information and see how things behave. As I said, we will actually create a dummy application where we will be able to simulate certain kind of scenarios so that it becomes easier for us to segment users based on those scenarios and see how things are working. If you like this video, do click on the thumbs up icon, and yes, don't forget to subscribe to my channel.